He rode the bus for free. You won't believe why. The fluorescent lights in the security booth hummed a monotonous tune, a constant companion to my graveyard shift. Nothing ever happened at the Consolidated Plastics warehouse. Just endless rows of stacked pallets, the smell of polyethylene, and the occasional scurrying rat. My only real entertainment was the Route 22 bus, the night owl, that stopped right outside the gate every night, taking me to and from my cramped apartment downtown. Martha, the driver, was a fixture. A woman weathered by years of city living, her face a roadmap of wrinkles etched by countless sleepless nights. She always had a kind word, a sympathetic ear for my complaints about the soul-crushing monotony of the job. The night owl was a sanctuary, a brief respite from the isolating silence of the warehouse. That's why he stood out so starkly. The first time I saw him, it was a Tuesday. The bus doors hissed open and he stepped on. Tall, impossibly thin, and dressed in a gray suit that looked like it had been tailored on Savile Row. In a city where most people wore ripped jeans and faded hoodies, he looked like he'd wandered in from another dimension. He moved with an unsettling stillness, his eyes fixed straight ahead. What struck me most, though, was that he didn't pay. He didn't swipe a card, didn't fumble for change. He just walked past Martha, who didn't even seem to notice. I chalked it up to my sleep deprivation. The late hours were starting to mess with my head. But the next night he was there again. Same gray suit, same unnerving stillness, same free ride. Martha remained oblivious. This became the pattern. Every night the man in the gray suit rode the night owl, never paying, never speaking. He always sat in the back, staring straight ahead, but I could feel his gaze on me. A weight, a pressure, like I was being dissected under a microscope. I started meticulously observing, counting the passengers, noting their habits. A tired nurse on her way home from the hospital, a college student buried in textbooks, a homeless man who always smelled of stale beer and desperation. They were my landmarks, my anchors in this increasingly bizarre reality. Then they started disappearing. First, it was the homeless man. One night he was there, slumped in his usual seat, the next, gone. No one mentioned it. Martha didn't seem to notice. I asked her about him the next night, trying to be casual. Haven't seen him in a while, she said, her eyes glazed over. Guess he found somewhere warmer to sleep. But there was something in her tone, a flicker of unease that mirrored my own growing fear. Then the college student vanished. One night, engrossed in his books, the next, an empty seat. The nurse followed soon after. Each disappearance was preceded by a subtle shift, a fleeting interaction with the man in the gray suit, a brief, almost imperceptible nod, a shared glance. I tried to warn Martha. There's a man, I said, my voice trembling. He's always on the bus. He doesn't pay and people are disappearing. She looked at me like I was crazy. Danny, honey, you're working too hard. I don't know what you're talking about. There's no one like that on my bus. I called the dispatcher. I need to report a possible problem on Route 22, I said, my voice tight with anxiety. What kind of problem, son? A gruff voice crackled over the radio. There's a man. He's not paying and passengers are going missing. A long silence followed. Then a sigh. Look, buddy, Martha's a good driver. She's been doing this for years. I think you need some sleep. The line went dead. My anxiety spiraled. I started having nightmares, twisted, distorted versions of the bus route, filled with shadowy figures and whispering voices. The man in the gray suit was always there, his eyes burning into my soul. I dug into local news archives, searching for any mention of missing persons. I found a pattern. Unsolved disappearances, all clustered around bus stops along Route 22. People who had vanished without a trace, leaving behind only unanswered questions. The police dismissed them as runaways, addicts, people who had simply chosen to disappear. But I knew better. One night, the man in the gray suit moved. He left his usual seat in the back and walked towards me. He stood in the aisle, blocking my path, his face expressionless. Martha didn't react. She kept her eyes fixed on the road, her hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white. He was closer now, and I could see the details I had missed before. The unnatural pallor of his skin, the vacant stare of his eyes, the way his gray suit seemed to absorb the light around him. He smiled. A slow, deliberate movement that sent a shiver down my spine. It wasn't a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator. He didn't speak, but I felt a presence in my mind, a cold, alien intelligence probing my thoughts. Suddenly, Martha screamed. The bus lurched violently, veering off course. The familiar streets dissolved into a blur of darkness. We were no longer on Route 22. We were somewhere else, somewhere wrong. The buildings outside were decaying, skeletal husks of factories and warehouses, their windows like empty sockets staring into the void. The air was thick with the stench of decay, a cloying sweetness that made my stomach churn. I gripped the seat in front of me, my heart pounding in my chest. "What's happening?" I yelled. "Where are you taking us?" Martha was sobbing, her body shaking uncontrollably. "I can't control it," she whispered. "He's got control." I stood up, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I pushed past the man in the gray suit, ignoring the icy touch that lingered on my skin. I grabbed the steering wheel, wrestling it away from Martha's trembling hands. "Stop the bus," I screamed. "Stop this damn bus." I yanked the wheel hard, sending the bus careening towards the side of the road. It crashed through a flimsy guardrail and lurched to a stop in a field of overgrown weeds. I stumbled off the bus, gasping for air, my legs weak and shaky. The man in the gray suit followed me, his movements fluid and silent. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice trembling. "What do you want?" He stopped a few feet away, his eyes fixed on me. He tilted his head slightly as if considering my question. Finally, he spoke. His voice was a low, raspy whisper, like the rustling of dry leaves. "Freedom," he said. "Release." I didn't understand. Freedom from what? Release from what? He smiled again, that chilling, unnatural smile. "From the mundane," he said. "From the pain, from the burden." He took a step closer. I ran. I ran as fast as I could, blindly stumbling through the darkness. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I had to get away from him. I eventually found my way to a highway and flagged down a passing car. I told the driver everything, but he just stared at me with a mixture of disbelief and pity. I went to the police. Officer Miller, a seasoned veteran with a weary face and a skeptical demeanor, listened to my story with a raised eyebrow. "So let me get this straight," he said. "You're telling me that a man in a gray suit is riding the bus for free and causing people to disappear?" "Yes," I said, my voice desperate. "I know it sounds crazy, but it's true. You have to believe me." Officer Miller sighed. "Look, Mr. Carter, I appreciate you coming forward, but there's no evidence to support your claims. No missing persons reports that match your descriptions, no record of any bus accidents on Route 22. But I saw it," I insisted. "I know what I saw." Officer Miller agreed to look into it, but I could tell he didn't believe me. I went back to my apartment, shaken and exhausted. I barricaded the door with furniture, trying to create a sense of security. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I peered through the curtains, scanning the street below. Everything seemed normal, but then I saw him. The man in the gray suit was standing on the sidewalk across the street. He was looking directly at my window. He smiled. I stumbled back from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. I slammed the curtains shut, but it was too late. I knew he was there. The lights flickered. Then, everything went black. End option 1 cliffhanger, start option 2 ambiguous survival. I woke up in my bed, drenched in sweat, my heart still racing. The sun was streaming through the window, casting long shadows across the room. Was it all a dream? I looked around, searching for any sign that something was amiss. Everything seemed normal, too normal. I went to work, my mind still reeling from the events of the previous night. The warehouse was the same as always. The endless rows of pallets, the smell of polyethylene, the humming fluorescent lights. I saw Martha that night. She was driving the night owl, her face pale and drawn. She didn't meet my eyes. I didn't mention the man in the gray suit. I didn't mention anything. Life went on, but it was never the same. I started seeing him everywhere. In crowds, on the street, always watching me. He never spoke, never approached me, but his presence was a constant reminder of what I had seen. I started taking different routes to work, avoiding the night owl whenever possible. But sometimes I had no choice. Sometimes I had to ride the bus. And every time I did, I would scan the passengers, searching for that familiar gray suit. He was always there, lurking in the shadows, waiting. I still ride the bus, I have to. But I never look him in the eye, and I always pay my fare, twice. End option 2 ambiguous survival.